are you today? What? Oh, Monday chapel? Oh, you thought we would not have one today? Yes, this week. I know, I'm late. It's Thursday, right? Yes. Oh my gosh, the week was crazy. But yes, this is the right video. You are in the right place. This was supposed to be Monday chapel. We're making an exception. We'll call it Thursday chapel, okay? But yes, this is the sermon for last weekend. It was amazing, an amazing experience to be in church, honoring the veterans, and also sharing more about the Bible. And we dived into the story of redemption. And I made a bold statement again, saying that talking about the God's real intention. And I think you should watch it. You know, it's going to be a blessing. It was for me and it was for many other people. So check it out. Back to work. Amen. So last week, I scared some of you, didn't I? Or no? No, it was okay, right? We've been talking about the Old Testament and some elements that we need to better understand and interpret the text. And yesterday I was making a few points in two areas. One, I was talking about learning to identify contextual information in the Bible, which means information that would make immediate sense to the ancient people. Remember, I mentioned the two parties of this country, right? If I say no taxes, I think of one party. If I say higher taxes on the wealthy, we think of the other party immediately, right? We don't need to explain. I don't need to name the parties. You already know what I'm talking about, right? So that's contextual information. So there are some information in the Old Testament that people in the ancient world would immediately identify. And one of the main contextual points of the narrative of creation is to highlight that there's one true God that is all-powerful and that created everything that exists. That's the most important contextual information. If there were dinosaurs, that's not the point of Genesis. If there was not dinosaurs, that's not the point. It's not a scientific encyclopedia. Right? You look at me like, oh my gosh, what's he saying? Okay? That's contextual. Theological information, that's the information that has value for our spiritual lives throughout eternity. It doesn't matter when, which society, in which point of time, that information fills our spirit and nurtured our spirits. Okay? And I highlighted three theological important informations about the creation narrative. First, God created human beings out of love. God created human beings to rule the earth. Not in a sense of rule like, you know, a king, but a sense of the whole creation was at the disposal of human beings. For the creation was there to benefit Adam and Eve. In fact, I didn't mention this, but I feel like I should. You know, Adam is Adam, right? But there's another Hebrew word used in the creation that we translate as ground, as earth. It's a word play in Hebrew because it's Adama. And Adama means a land that you can cultivate, a land that will provide you with food always. You see? So there's some wordplay there. The creation was there to support our survival. Why this is important? Because all other religions with multi-gods They placed humans as subjects, as slaves. God did not. God said, no, I am creating you to rule everything that I've created. And I have created you free. That's the second theological point. You have freedom. You have free will. And the third theological point, we were created to live in perfect harmony with God. That's what Adam and Eve experienced. They had perfect harmony with God until the fall. These are the three main theological points. What I didn't talk about last week. If you notice, I don't like to talk about sad stories, right? But yes, I need to. We need to, right? We need to. I didn't talk about the fall. Because what happened with the fall? Remember the covenantal language that I've been talking about? Under the covenant they had with God, they were what? Protected. They were under the wings of God. They were protected. God would take care of every need human beings would have. That was the whole point I've already mentioned at Eden. The land was at Adam and Eve's disposal, the waters, the animals, everything. We don't need to sweat. God will provide. But once they fell, once they sinned, they lost that connection with God. They lost that protection. And I don't want to go into detail of all, because we use a strong word. We say the curse of God upon Adam and Eve. I just want to highlight one. We find it in Genesis 3, verse 9. You can read it later. But it's basically about the sweat. It says, in the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Many of us read this and think, now we have to work. I'll be honest with you. If you say this to everybody, I'll deny it. But at some point in my life, I thought I hated working. Because I had a wrong theological understanding of work. I thought work was a curse. Because I understood this verse as, now I have to work hard to survive. And it's not really the point. First, Adam had work to do before the fall. He was working hard, He had to oversee all creation. A lot of work. And the real point here is not about labor. It's about anxiety and fear. Because remember, what did they lose? They lost God's protection. They lost God's provision. And now they have to think, what if the crop doesn't bloom? What if all our livestock die? What if there's a drought? What if? And we can relate to that, right? What if I don't have the money to pay the bills? What if I don't have enough to pay the medical bills? What if the government takes all my money with those taxes? What if I get fired? The anxiety of now having to survive and finding means for survival, that's the sweat that the Bible is talking about in Genesis 3:9. And what's the importance of listening to this? What is the importance of understanding that now human beings did not have access to all benefits of creation? Because that's the image. God spent his time creating everything perfect. This is my house. It is perfect. It has Elsa, Anna, and all the characters. But when Adam and Eve committed the original sin, all creation is out of order, disconnected, destroyed, broken. And it's sad, but it's important to remind ourselves about that. Because many times what we hear, how can you believe in God with all this suffering around us? God is not just because he allows this and that to happen. And you know why we say this and we think this? All of us. Because we still believe that the world we live in is like Eden. We still believe that the world is good. We still believe that we are good. We forget that everything is broken, everything is out of order, everything is displaced. So in fact, if that is true, the goodness that we witness in life is the exception. And we believe as Christians that the only way we can experience this goodness is because we can reconcile ourselves with who? With God, our Creator. Our Creator. And what did I say last week about one of the most important theological themes of the Bible that is found also in Eden? Is the importance of the presence of God. Because when we are reconnected with God, we have the ability to rebuild. We have the ability to put things back together, step by step. And I won't do the whole thing. We cannot do it by ourselves. We need God's presence. And what I was talking to the kids, God made a huge statement when he put a cherubim with a sword saying, you cannot come here. In fact, if you look at the ancient documents and archaeological documents, you will find that in every palace, every temple, they would have images, huge images, of cherubims. Most of them with the same features. Most of them would have a body of a lion, a face of a man, and wings. Because they were there to scare people away. You don't get an appointment with the king. You don't go to worship whatever God without fear in your heart. You don't have free access to those deities' presence. And God made the same statement. You will not have more access to this place, to this holy place, Adam and Eve. They had the cherubim there, the cherubim. It's sad. It's sad. And when is the first time we see a glimpse of the God's presence back to the Hebrew nation? Do you want to guess? If you think about Noah, if you think about Abraham, and so on, you will find, and Joseph, Isaac, you will find what? Angels, and you will find visions. The first glimpse of God being present with his people, once again, is when God talks to Moses and say, build me a dwelling place. Build me the tabernacle. and build me the ark of the covenant, because as long as I am with my people, you will strive. What is the huge problem we find with the tabernacle? The tabernacle had 3 areas. One, the outer area. People could go with their sacrifices, asking for forgiveness, asking for blessings, and sacrificing. Then you will have another room that only the priests could go, where the prayers were held, and some other priestly rituals would be held. And then you will have another room called the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant would be staying there. Because that was, as I said, God's throne. That meant that's where God is. What was the problem with that? Only once a year, one person, the high priest, would be able to go to that place where God was to atone for the sins of the whole nation. And again, as I said, the cherubims were there to say, hey, are you coming here? And they say that they would have a robe around the high priest's wrist, because some of them would die in the presence of God, and then you had to pull them, because that's a holy place. But that's the sad side of it. The good side of it is that God was telling us, I want to dwell among you again. I want to live with you once again. And I want you to remind you that you need my presence to find the fulfillment and the peace that Adam and Eve had before the fall. It was a reminder. But that was part of the story of redemption that would take centuries and centuries until Jesus comes. And as I said to the children, he offers the perfect atonement for our sins. And he reconciles us. He gives us the option, because we are free. He gives us the option to accept that atonement, to accept that sacrifice, so that we can be reconciled with God once again. The journey is not easy as it was at Eden. And I don't want to trigger any veteran here. But as I was talking about the cherubims, the point is this: we have a nice image of angels, right? We think that they're blonde and look like babies and they're nice. We don't see them as warriors with swords saying no to your face. And when we usually talk about veterans, we honor the veterans, we value the veterans. But some of us have this beautiful image that they're protecting people, they're protecting us by giving cards or something. They're fighting. They're fighting. I heard a veteran say to me once, what haunts me is not the people I saved, it's the people I have to kill. That's the sacrifice. At least when I say thank you for a sacrifice to a veteran, that's what comes to my mind. The awful things that they had to witness in wars and to do to keep us free. A lot of messed up things happened in order that you and I could have free, absolute, and harmonious access to God. Because that's the real intention that God has. The whole Bible. I would summarize, that's the whole point. And I know it's kind of hard to believe it. It's too spiritual sometimes. Once, since Jocelyn is here, I'm going to say this. Once I was told that I am mystical. Because I believe that the only thing that makes sense in our life as Christians, in our religion, is to have this spiritual access to God. Is to have this spiritual connection with God. If being a Christian is just about coming to church and doing rituals and doing the same thing, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. I want to be with God. I want to feel it. I want to get fist bumps. I want to see and say, why am I doing that? I don't like to do that. And why I'm doing that I don't like and I'm happy. God created everything for us so that we could live with Him. And I think it's just right that we would try our best to give it back, to value that, and to do what we can to be closer to God. That's it. That's it. You know, I will share this. I shouldn't, but I will. This week I had a meeting with the DS. The superintendent is meeting all the pastors. And I was like, well, what he wants to know, my gosh. You know he did? The first question was this: Pastor Lucas, where are you finding joy in your life? The second question was, Pastor Lucas, when is your Sabbath day? And are you faithful to your Sabbath day? Pastor Lucas, how is your spiritual life? Are you having fun with God? Cokesbury, where are you finding joy in your life? Cokesbury, are you finding God in your life? Are you trying? What are you doing to make sure God is present in your life, but what are you doing to make sure you can perceive, experience God's presence in your life? There's no cherubim anymore. God is like that, with open arms, saying, come, you are mine, and I'm yours. That's God's real and final intent, that we can be with Him all the time. May God bless you. Let us pray.